question for you today. Have you ever noticed that the more afraid you feel, the smaller your world becomes? And so maybe today you're a person like I've been in times in my past where you've stopped raising your hand and stopped sharing your dreams and stopped hoping. And it's not because you don't care anymore, but it's just because it feels so much safer to be quiet. My name is Donna Woolham, and I'm your host here on the Reinvent Your World podcast. We're talking about starting again and what that looks like. And in particular today, we're talking about exercising courage and building our courage muscles. But courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it is a quiet, still little voice. And I've been in the place where maybe you are today, where it just felt safer to stay quiet. And I want to share with you just a few things about how to build your courage just one little piece at a time. It's kind of tricky for me to pick out just one place in my life where the voice of courage was telling me to be stronger, but really all I wanted to do was hide away. When you feel like that life is tricky around you and maybe you've really given your all and you've tried and it didn't work out, it can be easy to say, well, maybe this isn't for me, or maybe I need to just let those dreams go, or maybe I really don't have anything to give. Most recently, the place where I battled that was in the position where I was working, and I really thought I was doing the work that the Lord had called me to, but I began to notice that less and less and less was my voice wanted in the meetings, in the rooms, in the situations. And it became evident to me that there had been a shift in the environment where I was working. And I would say things and they would be laughed off, or some kind of comment would be made, an offhand comment. And I just began to feel like nobody wants to hear my voice. And so I began to be quieter and quieter and quieter. And when you do that, what happens is you become afraid that you have anything valuable to say. And so it has taken a lot for me after leaving that position. First of all, there was this attitude of like, well, fine then, I'll just go and talk where people want to hear me. And so there was this kind of rebellious heart. I mean, I don't know if it's rebellious, but it was kind of like, fine then, you don't want to hear me? I'll go where people want to hear me. And I think that's probably a good thing to do, a healthy thing to do. But until you deal with the pain of that, then what happens is you find yourself in situations where you will naturally shrink back and be smaller again, in situations where it's not even called for, because we are dealing with the pain and the trauma of that situation that hasn't been healed or hasn't been worked through. It is influencing and affecting us in ways that we don't even understand. And that goes back to my whole teaching and my whole training and all of my coaching that goes around what I call that reasoning box that I've talked about before, where we are living life out of the experiences and our interpretation of experiences. But there are other times, that kind of thing, you pull yourself up, you step out, you say, fine, I'm going to go where my voice is necessary. And I'm not saying, well, let me just use the scripture, but Jesus told the disciples, if you're going someplace and they don't want to hear you, you shake the dirt off your feet and you go on. And I'm not saying that these people were unholy or unchristian, any of that kind of stuff. I'm just saying that sometimes there's a place when we need to just step out. We just need to step away and we need to go into a different direction. But sometimes what we're having to do is just wake up and have courage for what's in front of us in the day ahead. We're living in circumstances and situations that are painful on a daily basis, and there's not the ability to just take your feet and walk out the door. Some of those had to do with waking up every day as a caregiver for my husband and taking care of the things that had to be taken care of. And not only all of these practical things about taking care of the household and getting to doctor's appointments and to make sure he had everything that he needed and getting his medicine and making sure we had the right food and taking care of the dog and the fish tank and all of that kind of stuff, all of that practical stuff. But there were mornings when I woke up and it was like, I can't believe that this is my life and I have to face my life today, and having the courage to just face the battle. And then after Richard went to Jesus, that absolute showing up every single day for my life. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel courageous. But there was in me the strength of the Lord to help me keep moving forward. And each day that I did that, each day that I took a step forward, then I've had more courage and more courage and more courage. And I'm reminded about Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, where we've talked about Joshua before. I just love this picture where God tells him over and over and over, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. He says, don't be afraid and don't be discouraged. And here's the key for that. It wasn't about Joshua or you or me just being strong in our own strength. It was God's promise that he would be with Joshua, and he is with us wherever we go. And we have in the New Testament the scripture that tells us that God's strength is perfected in our weakness. I don't think that courage is necessarily something that you're born with. It goes back to this whole process. We can have different responses to challenges in our life based on how we were raised, the things we've experienced, how we operate out of those places of life. What did we witness? It's the difference between a child whose parent ran to them every time they fell and then the parent who, just as an insight, I was probably more this parent who, when the child fell, waited to see if the child was going to cry before they did anything, and then would say, hey, how you doing? Come over here. If we are taught that every time we fall that it's a crisis, then it's maybe a little more difficult for us to walk in the courage that God has for us, and we need to work at developing our courage muscle. And so just like when we are exercising and building strength in our upper body or our lower body, when we're doing ab work, it's not easy, and it takes discipline and it takes determination to build those muscles and to create strength in them. The same thing is true about developing mental and emotional and spiritual courage. One of the things about science that teaches us is that every courageous action fires and strengthens new neural pathways. So that's the sciencey piece of it. But the way that I like to phrase that, and you've heard me talk about that before, is it's building a path. Just like when you walk the same path to the mailbox or to across the yard or on the path that you're walking your dog every day, whatever you're doing there that you do repeatedly, there is a path that grows on that. And we do the same thing in our brain, building these neural pathways. And so every time we take an action that requires courage, then we are strengthening that neural muscle of courage. And every time we show up when it's uncomfortable, when it doesn't make sense to us, when we're having to go against our fight or flight reactions, then we are reprogramming our internal identity that we are courageous. When God was telling Joshua, be strong and courageous, he didn't say, act like you're strong and act like you're courageous. He says, your identity is strong and your identity is courageous. And that's what he wants for us too, as we're moving through these situations. Because courage isn't, and here's that cliche part that, most of us don't really like, but courage isn't about not having any fear. I mean, we all walk with fear in different places in our life, but what courage is about choosing to take action when we are afraid. The cliche. The cliche. But cliches are what they are because they're truth. So we are going to choose the action when everything in us is saying run. So I have a couple of questions for you today, and I ask myself these questions. What would change if I believed the courage was already inside of me? And so I'll ask you this. It's one of the questions that coaches ask that people, if you knew what to do, what would you do? If you knew the answer, what would you tell yourself? So here's the question. What would change in your life if you believed you were already courageous, that courage is inside of you already and it's just waiting to be trained? What would change if you could just take one small step toward the dreams? What could you bring back to life? What dream could you reignite? And fear and being afraid doesn't make you weak. Being afraid and being scared is the natural reaction to situations in life that feel out of control, look out of control, that have created chaos around you. We are looking to the left and to the right and hoping that some stability will come so you're not weak when you're afraid and when you're scared of what's next. But every time you decide that you're going to take that one small step, you are becoming stronger. You can be strong and courageous. This month, I've got some special places open in my calendar. So if something in this conversation today has stirred something and you're like, yeah, I'm ready to take a step. I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to change the way life is moving for me, then I would love to invite you to come over and have a conversation with me. Because I work with women who are just like you, who are tired of shrinking back in their life. They're ready to take back their voice, their strength, and their future. So if that's you, then come over and let's have a conversation. And you can come over to my website at donnawoolham.com. I think one of the things that helped me is knowing that I was not walking by myself. When I was walking through all of these transformational changes, when I began to walk through what life looked like outside of that job and ministry that I'd been doing and felt like I was called to, I was so thankful for the people that God put in my life to help me to walk through that, to help me put the pieces together and to understand that there were other things going on there that maybe I hadn't paid attention to or seen. And it helped me to know that I wasn't alone. And then after Richard died and I began to try to recreate my life and begin to live again and to live more strongly and to live courageously, I was so thankful for the people that walked with me through those places and helped me to see beyond what was going on in my mental and emotional state and to help me know that there was a path forward and helped me to find the path forward. So if this sounds like something you'd like, just come over to my website. But before we close, I just want to say I want to honor you for the brave steps you're taking already, the ones that you're making even when it feels like you're going to fall apart, that you wake up in the morning and instead of throwing the covers back over your head, you take one more step and you face one more day. And when you wonder how you're going to make the decisions, you are still making the decisions. You are braver than you know. And I just honor those brave parts inside of you that maybe you haven't even recognized. And remember this saying, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the breath that says, I'll try again tomorrow. I want to encourage you, keep going, keep choosing to be bold, and always start again. And remember that day by day, every time you exercise that courage muscle, you are getting stronger and stronger, and you are further down the road on your journey to wholeness. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.